My name is Roger Buck, and today we're going to only start, talking about something I call the new secular religion. Now that's a term that I use in my book, The Gentle Traditionalist. There's a link down below. And The Gentle Traditionalist is actually a character. The book is actually a dialogue between different characters to explore ideas. And the Gentle Traditionalist in the book asserts the idea that while secularism might not be a religion in the strict de jure sense of the term, it's nonetheless operating as a de facto religion with its own ethical codes, its own injunctions, its own commandments, even a subtle metaphysic. This is what he says in the book. And he suggests that the fact that that is denied in our society is why secularism is getting away with murder. And we see that very poignantly in Ireland, where we see the secularization of Ireland is leading to killing babies. Anyway, I said I was only going to start talking about this today, and the reason for that, one reason anyway, is that the last episode, episode 16, was this vast, sprawling, massive, monumental 2-hour episode. And I want to keep it shorter today, much shorter. But before I start talking about the new secular religion, I just want to say something quickly about episode 16. Because episode 16 was like this massive personal explosion for me. It was called The Indoctrination of Ireland. And I flag this particular episode because it's not just about Ireland. Really, it's about the indoctrination of the whole world. And it's also a very personally important episode to me. Maybe the most important personally I've ever done. And it speaks to things that are central and core to everything I'm trying to say at this YouTube channel. So if you're interested in this channel, you might want to check out episode 16. Anyway, yeah, I found myself exploding in that episode about a number of things. And one of them was the very dictatorial nature of liberalism or secularism. And I was speaking about that in the context of the alt-right, because I was suggesting that the alt-right is a reaction, and in some ways a very healthy reaction, to our liberal secular society. Because basically I was suggesting, and yeah, I went a bit nuts, I sort of said that secularism is making commandments. It's saying, thou shalt be abstract, thou shalt be abstract, thou shalt be abstract. And maybe I wasn't completely clear about that. And I was glad that I actually got a question here from actually a friend of mine, Moyle Houghlin O'Kellick. He's a Catholic author like myself, but he raised the question, what was I trying to say when I said the media and the establishment were trying to tell us, thou shalt be abstract? Now, Moyle Houghlin's question brings up at least two things for me. First, what did I mean by abstract? And second, what did I mean by thou shalt? To answer this question, I'm going to answer it in a very personal and unusual way, friends, relating to something personally going on for me in my life right now. Please bear with me while I make a little digression. Because I want to say that a long time ago, 30 years ago, I was living at the Findhorn community in Scotland, a New Age community which, like all New Age things, is very liberal, very progressive, very cosmopolitan. And I met there a woman. I won't give her name. Her first initial was V. Let's call her V. And V, I came into the first relationship with a woman I'd ever had with V. You could say that V was my first love, except that, looking back on it right now, I don't ever think that I loved V enough. And how this has come back to me is that I recently learned that V, in my age, early 50s, died in a car crash recently. And it's really quite shook me up. And it's caused me to do something. Because even though I say, and that's true, I didn't honour or love V enough, I did keep her mail all these years, which shows that I cherish something in her, even though I lost contact with her. And I pulled out all of her mail, and a flood of memories came back, because the mail she wrote me was so intelligent, so creative, beautiful, just a testimony to a really poetic, creative, beautiful, idealistic, intelligent spirit who's now gone from the world and I can never speak to again. I can pray for her, and I pray for you, V, and I make this video as a strange little tribute to you. But there's another thing that's relevant, obviously, because V was a feminist. She would describe herself as a radical feminist. And I'm now going to say some things about V's radical feminism, which might seem critical of V, and I don't wish to criticize you, V. But nonetheless, you give me an opening into what I want to speak about, because all those years ago, it seems to me that in your idealism, you tried to convert me to your feminist creed, even your feminist religion. And I have to say, I don't know a lot about feminism. I've never read a book on feminism, so I don't actually like speaking about it much. All I can say is that I lived in relationship with a very passionate and dedicated feminist for a while. And what V wanted me to do, what you wanted me to do, V, was you wanted me to behave as though biological facts didn't matter. So I was much stronger than you as a man, but you insisted when we went out that that both of us, I shouldn't carry any more weight than you would, even though I was much more capable of it, because it denied the equality between us. And also V was suggesting, or more than suggesting, that it wasn't right to speak about waiters and waitresses, but we should adopt new things like calling a waiter a wait person, or a waitress a wait person. All of this was a bit exotic for me back then in the mid-1980s. It was new to me, and I imagine that I was really quite compliant then. I probably went along with it, and I don't know if I ever really questioned. Well, I was seeing that there was obviously has been terrible cruelty and injustice to women over centuries by men. That's an obvious truth. But are we really going to solve that cruelty and injustice if we start becoming abstract? If we start talking about people as wait people? Because that's what you're doing. You're becoming abstract. You're moving from the particular flesh and blood human reality of a woman or a man who waits on tables, a waiter or a waitress, and you're moving to an abstract category when you talk about a wait person. Now, obviously, I can't have a conversation with V anymore, and I can't ask her how she came to her intensely felt conviction that moving to this abstract language would somehow reduce the injustice towards women. But I'm looking at her mail. V was from New York City, and she went to a very liberal college in New York, and she's writing me about that college. And I can't help but wonder, were you indoctrinated, V? Did you really, truly think these things out? You were, and you are, a very intelligent spirit. But is it possible that you were indoctrinated by this liberal culture of your New York college? I can't help wondering about that. Because there's two things here. First, yes, there's the call to being abstract. But there's the second issue, the command, the commandment, thou shalt speak about people like weight persons, even if I don't buy it. I don't buy the fact that this is going to help women. No, I don't buy it. I don't buy this abstraction. But nonetheless, V, it almost hurts me to criticize you, but V, you were, like me, very drawn to the New Age. You were drawn to the New Age, and you wouldn't have believed that the New Age is a religion, like I now believe the New Age is a religion. You wouldn't believe that feminism was a religion, but I suspect feminism is a de facto religion, or in many cases it operates as a de facto religion. And you wouldn't have thought, at that young age of 22, I think, that you were trying to, compel me in a religious behavior. Thou shalt speak of weight people. None of that would have gone through your mind, I think, as brilliant as you were. And so I'm just digesting all these things. And I'm looking at it in other ways as well. Friends, I told you last time I subscribe to The Economist, which I consider a cesspit of social and economic liberalism. And I'd like to actually read you something from The Economist this week, which is very much about the same thing. That people, I think, are just being carried along by a tide into greater and greater abstractions without really thinking, is this really going to help people? Anyway, the article that I want to refer to in The Economist concerns the German language, and I'll read you a bit of it. German is more gendered than many other languages. In English, for example, professor can describe an academic of either sex, whereas in German, Professor is strictly male and Professorin is strictly female. And the whole tone of the article, at least the way I read it, is that The Economist agrees that there's some sort of problem here. And as it goes on to say, at a time when traditional gender identities are blurring, and Facebook, for example, lets its users choose between 60 gender labels. 60 genders, my friends. 60. These are pure abstractions with no grounding in flesh and blood reality. And friends, I'm relatively okay relatively speaking, if somebody wants to identify with one of these 60 abstract identities. But what I'm not okay with is when they start expecting me to recognize that as having truth, where I see no truth in it whatsoever. My book, The Gentle Traditionalist, The Gentle Traditionalist speaks about the world going mad. And I'm just going to be honest with you, friends. That's what I see happening. And it's almost like we're being compelled to go mad now. We're being compelled to go along with this abstractionism. And it's not just gender. I mean, last time I started speaking about the alt-right, or the new right, in Europe. And there's very much obviously a concern with those people about what is being called globalism. There's a feeling of a globalist pressure to give up one's sense of cultural identity, to give up one's sense of cultural roots, or to act like they don't matter, and instead become something that's not defined. Something where one's culture isn't important, which again is another way of becoming abstract. So I've moved from issues of feminism or these transgender issues to the whole pressure to deny one's cultural individuality. And so that's another way. We see the same pattern, the pattern of thou shalt be abstract. Now, friends, I don't identify with being part of the new right or the alt-right. I personally identify with being a Catholic, and I think the Catholic religion has other, different, better answers than to this new terrible abstractionism, this new secular religion of abstractionism. Nonetheless, I believe that the new right, the alt-right, has a legitimate grievance here. I will even go as far as to say that many of these people in the alt-right are awake to things that all kinds of other people are fast asleep to. So when I look back at dear V, all those years ago, when I look back to who I was at, age 22, age 23, I was completely, entirely asleep to these issues of abstractionism. And I was asleep to the idea that either my New Ageism or feminism might be functioning as a de facto religion trying to impose its creed on other people. And in mentioning the New Age, I might come back to my book, The Gentle Traditionalist, which, as I said earlier, is a dialogue between different characters representing different points of view. And one of those characters is a New Ager. And this New Ager has gone to a radical step. He's surrendered his name. He won't even have a name because he's convinced that names cause division and conflict. Identity causes division and conflict. So he's taken the ultimate step of surrendering his name. So that's the way, the New Age. Another way, New Agers, this is a bit of an exaggeration, but New Agers are into abstractionism with these very idealistic motives. But, friends, as a Catholic, what I say is, you're not going to become less violent, less fallen, less cruel by just giving up identity or names. You're not going to become a more loving human being. No, you need to practice being a better human being. And as a Catholic, I say that you need help. You need God's help. And as a Catholic, I say the greatest help comes to us through the sacraments of the Church that Christ gave us. In fact, in the nearly 20 years or so that I've been receiving these sacraments, so receiving the body of blood of Christ into me, what I feel inside myself, and that's the subject in my books and in my other videos, is that I'm becoming less abstract. I'm becoming more personal, more flesh and blood, more human. The action of the Catholic sacraments is to make us more particular, more personal, less abstract. I am aware of how strange that sounds to non-Christians, or even Protestant Christians who aren't bathed in the sacraments. And I have a theory about that. I think it doesn't sound so strange to Catholics, not simply because we accept the dogmas of the Church, but because somewhere in ourselves we feel it. It doesn't mean that we have to have this, incredible mystical experience of the body and blood of Christ working in us, although if you talk privately to Catholics, they may tell you things that they have experienced the body and blood of Christ, and they're very private about it. But no, you don't have to have this incredible mystical experience. You may just feel it working day by day. Somehow it's real. That's why devout Catholics, they're not really happy going to church once a week often. Myself, I've come to need to go to Mass every day if I can. Occasionally, I miss it if I have to. But I aim to go every day because I feel it. I feel it changing me. And, that's why I could never go back to being a New Ager or a Protestant, because I would be bereft without this experience of the sacraments, making me more human and more individual, as I say. That's really, everything I'm getting at in my books and in these videos. But anyway, that is also why I'm saying I think the Catholic answer to this modern religion of abstractionism, this modern obsession with abstractionism, is the deepest answer I've found. It feels to me far more profound than the answers that I'm often hearing in the alt-right, particularly this terrible orientation towards skin pigmentation. Friends, please don't interpret anything I'm saying about the alt-right as endorsing solutions like turning towards skin color or race. I am simply saying in the alt-right there is a hunger for us to be flesh and blood human beings in a way that the globalist order and the secular order is trying to deny us. And in my 20 years of practicing the sacraments and more, just coming to practice them on a daily basis, I just need the Mass. It seems to me that that is where the real answers are. But anyway, friends, I'm going to try and keep this episode short, mercifully short, rather than the super long epic that I did last time. So, we started with a question from my friend Moyle Houghlin O'Kellick about why did I say thou shalt be abstract? And this is a way into beginning to talk about the new secular religion, because there are many more aspects of the new secular religion that I hope to explore in future episodes, but this, as I say, is just a start. But the fact that we started with Moyle Houghlin also gives me an excuse to finish with Moyle Houghlin. And although we're going a little bit away from the topic, there are other things that I want to say about Moyle Houghlin now. The first, which doesn't seem related at all, is something I saw that he put on Facebook yesterday, and while I was preparing this episode. And for me, it's one of the best things that I've seen on Facebook in a long while. And it also relates to the themes of the last video, where I very much spoke about Chesterton. Mal is a Chestertonian, and one of the things I was talking about last time is how Chesterton and Belloc were so conscious of the fake news coming out of the Anglo establishment back in their day, that they tried to forge an alternative, this weekly newspaper, GK's Weekly. So yeah, in this whole project that I'm trying to do on YouTube, I'm concerned about fake news. And Mal said something in a very, spirit that I think Chesterton would have loved, about fake news on Facebook, and I'd like to quote it to you. It's extraordinary how fake news always threatens a particular point of view, the liberal, secularist, globalist view, which just happens to correspond to the viewpoint of the vast majority of media, academic, political, and bureaucratic elites. It's funny there's no fake news from the opposite point of view. Mal, if you're listening to that, I let out a cheer. I hit the love button, and it just made me roar. It's great. Anyway, so I wanted to include that, but I also wanted to include something else. At the end of the last massive 2-hour episode, I made a mention of a book that Mal has written, a book called Inspiration from the Saints, and I rather regretted that I only mentioned it at the very end, because I know that not everyone will get to the end of that gigantic episode, so I wanted to say a little bit briefly about it again. So yeah, Mal has written a book about the saints, the lives of the saints, how the Catholic mystery penetrates the lives of the saints, how radical and inspiring the Catholic saints really are, penetrated as they are by the body and blood of Christ. And it's a fascinating read. And yeah, I say more at the end there. It's also very, very much, indebted to Chesterton. There's a section about Chesterton as well, but I won't say more now. I'm trying to keep this short. But as I say, my last episode, episode 16, there's a lot there, not just about Ireland, but about the future direction of this channel. And fake news, and Chesterton, and Belloc, and more, the alt-right, on and on. There's a lot there. Anyway, I just wanted to draw attention to Moyle Hochlin's efforts, including his book, and also including a forum that he's running that I participate in as well, called the Irish Conservatives Forum. I'll put links down below where you can get his book and where you can find that forum. I'm also going to put a link down below to another forum I participate in, run, as I've said before, by a very dear friend of mine called Tracy Tuscherone, called Fish Eaters, because all of these things actually feel to me like they're a continuation in the 21st century of what the Chesterton and Belloc were trying to do. They realized that reality was being squashed, was being manipulated, was being twisted, as I tried to say last time, by the Anglo establishment back in their day, writing in London. They realized that fake news was coming out of that, and they tried to provide an alternative voice that would provide access to real news and access to Catholic perspectives. And almost in uncanny ways, I see how both Moyle Hochlin in his work and very much Tracy at Fish Eaters is carrying on that same spirit that I find in Chesterton and Belloc from the 1930s. We're going to keep exploring all of these themes. So right now, friends, we're going to wrap this up. What can I say as a last line? Let's be very, very conscious that there is something like a de facto new secular religion that is trying to strip us of our humanity, that is trying to strip us of identity, that is trying to make us abstract. And let us as Catholics realize that the deepest answer to this dehumanizing process of becoming abstract, the deepest answer has been given in the sacraments of the Holy Church. And let us let those sacraments of the Holy Church, the body and blood of Christ, penetrate us more and more and more, so that we become ever more human, ever more particular, ever more personal, and ever less abstract. That's all I'm going to say for now, friends. God bless you, and thank you for listening.